This is ABTV, Animal Bites Television.
So you guys know that I love blue-tongued skinks like this guy here, which is actually a sunrise northern blue-tongued skink. But I haven't really talked about blue-tongued skinks much this year. We've had some cool babies, and I want to just kind of update you guys not only with these awesome animals and talk about why I still think that they're the future of reptiles, but also kind of give you an idea of some of the stuff that we're working with. Some of the babies from last year when I did a show are now almost adults and look so gorgeous. So I just want to show off blue-tongued skinks and get you guys as excited as I am. Back to this gorgeous sunrise northern blue-tongued skink. Now this happens to be what they call a polygenic trait, which basically just means that you're breeding for a particular phenotype or color or pattern or whatever it might be. In this case, you're just breeding for a more yellow animal. So there's a few different things going on with blue-tongued skinks. You certainly have polygenic, and I'm going to show you some of those. You do have some recessives, and there's even more recessives over in Australia, and a few of them are floating around in the US and Europe as well. And then, of course, you just have like kind of what we think might be some co-dominant animals, but it's so much in the infancy of blue-tongued skinks that we really don't even know some of the genetics behind them. So there's going to be some really fun times coming on. Now I want to talk a little bit about northern blue-tongued skinks, eastern blue-tongued skinks, and of course then there's the Indo blue-tongued skinks, and then there's a whole bunch of different islands and subspecies and so on like that. But what you have here is what they call Taliqua skinkoides intermedia, which is the northern variety. It happens to be my favorite of all of the species or subspecies of blue-tongued skinks. But you also have skinkoides, which are the eastern variety, which are almost just as cool, and they actually have even larger litters of babies. But there aren't nearly the amount of eastern blue-tongued skinks in the United States, so I'm really passionate about the northerns. And then, of course, you have the Indonesians that are the Gygus, which look similar, a little bit different color. Typically, they're not quite as tame, but they're still really great animals. My point is, all of these animals are going to be really amazing. And for people that are looking for a really cool pet reptile and you want a lizard, you know, let's say a leopard gecko, they stay pretty small. Even a bearded dragon stays pretty small. Look at the size of a northern blue-tongued skink. That's a pretty sizable animal. So this is a great step up if you want something that's really cool, but you're not ready for, say, a monitor lizard. And as you can see, these guys are puppy dog tame. And one of the things that's really cool about them is the ease of care. I'm going to get into this, and there's probably a little controversy I'm going to talk about as well. So this is how we keep our blue-tongued skinks, which is very similar to my friends that keep them down in Australia. Basically, listen, I've only been keeping blue-tongued skinks for a couple years, so I'm not pioneering the way to keep blue-tongued skinks. I'm just basically mimicking the people that have been keeping them for 20, 25 years successfully. So they'll just keep, you know, paper down like this. Now, these animals can crawl under the paper, but we also keep some Timothy hay in the back. That's also for them to kind of hide, because in the wild, these guys are definitely, you know, going to be foraging through, you know, leaf litter and so like that and hiding in that. And then all we do is just keep some water. We keep a dish of dry food, and that's basically it. Now, where the controversy comes in is, do they need UV light? And I know some people really are hardcore on the fact that all lizards need UV light. And you might be right. I have no idea, to be totally honest with you. Now, we're trying to feed a diet that's high in vitamin D, or even supplementing with vitamin D supplements, and that helps without the UV. I'll be honest with you. If you want to keep them with UV light, absolutely you should keep them with UV light. All I know is that a couple of the guys that have pioneered blue-tongued skinks for the last almost 3 decades don't keep UV light on their skinks. Maybe they're wrong, but they have 25-year-old animals that are still reproducing every single year. I don't want to get into a controversy. You can comment down below. Tell me what you think. Maybe in the future I'll start keeping them on UV light. I have no idea. Again, I'm just following what other people did that seemed to be good. But the fact is that keeps this extremely easy. We keep a hot spot of about 92 to 95 degrees in the back, and then on the cool side it's about 82 degrees. So super easy to keep. We feed them dry food. Now once a week we will put wet cat food in. Now this is another thing I want to touch base on just a little bit before we start looking at some just beautiful animals, and that's the fact that there doesn't seem to be a staple blue-tongued skink diet. Some people feed dry cat food, dry dog food, ferret food, wet dog food, wet cat food. It seems like it's all over the place. And of course, you have the people that feed dog food say, don't ever feed cat food. You have the people that feed cat food say, don't ever feed dog food. The fact is, it seems like everyone is being successful with whatever they feed them. That being said, I think over the next year to 2 years, you're going to start to see some actually commercially available blue-tongued skink diets, both in wet and in dry, that are going to be specifically manufactured for blue-tongued skinks. That will kind of take the guessing game out of what type of food you should actually feed your blue-tongued skinks. So that's basically it, guys. I personally love blue-tongued skinks. The fact that they're live bears makes them super fun. I'm going to show you a few babies in a little bit. And I really believe this is the future of the reptile hobby. Ball pythons reign supreme for 15 plus years, are going to continue to be very popular, but these guys are up and coming. I think they're going to be awesome. So let's just take a look at some cool animals. All right, so now we have all the boring stuff out. I'm just going to barrage you with some really cool looking blue-tongued skinks. This, of course, is what they call a sunset blue-tongued skink, and it's kind of related to that same line as the sunrise, but these guys are more orange, and you can see this one's really pretty orange. We have some that almost border on red in the sunset, and again, that's a polygenic trait that just meant that Andrew Seiki, who really developed the trait, really, and other people have now kind of enhanced it, but he was the one that originally worked on it. He just started breeding the orangest northern blue-tongued skinks together, and over generation after generation after generation, they kept getting more and more orange. Now, the problem with some of the polygenic issues is the fact that if you over inbreed just for the color, of course, you're inbreeding so much and the animals get a little bit weak. Some sunsets are that way, but fortunately, they're now being outbred to stuff like the blaze line and other really red and orange lines and getting really strong animals again, so that's really cool. But sunsets, these were the animals that really caught my eye when I first started looking at blue-tongued skinks, thinking, holy cow, these are awesome. So they're definitely really cool and going to be available quite a bit over the next couple years. This is another polygenic trait that really doesn't even have a name yet, to be honest with you, and it's just a real reduction of patterning along the back. It's something that caught my eyes when I saw a couple people working on it, and you see that these bands here, some have bands almost all the way across. They all fade out, but these guys fade out much, much more. You can see the entire side of their back is completely void of banding pretty much. So over generations, we can maybe try to reduce the patterning. I don't think we're going to get a patternless northern blue-tongued skink or a pure patternless northern, but we're probably going to get pretty close. Again, just a little bit of a project that's a side project to everything else, because I'm thinking like this in a sunset, for instance, could be almost a solid orange animal, which would be really cool. So again, another polygenic trait, not so much proven out 100% yet, but has some pretty good promise. I know I showed you guys the sunrises earlier that are basically just a really yellow animal bred for it. The thing that's interesting about this yellow animal is that it's not related to sunrises at all and just popped out of a litter at some point and looked a little bit unusual, and I ended up buying it. Now, what's interesting about this is the fact that it could actually be even a recessive mutation. We're not really sure yet. I'm raising this girl up and she should be ready to breed this next year, and then of course I'm going to have to raise up babies and breed back to see if it is an actual mutation that's polygenic or possibly even, say, a lacking red recessive trait. So we're going to have to see what happens, but I wanted to show you this off because just look at the white in that animal. That's what makes me think that it's something different, is that it's really yellow and then super, super white. Now that tells me that there's probably something else going on than a polygenic trait. Take a look at this little monkey here. This happens to be a coffee northern. Again, another polygenic trait. Ironically enough, this has been produced by Andrew Seiki, the one that also did the polygenic sunset. So he was kind of working this project in tandem with the sunset, although they never have been crossed together. And basically what he was doing here was trying to, instead of increasing the amount of red or orange, he was trying to increase that kind of rich brown look to him. And several generations in, it's really making a big difference. Again, a lot of the northerns are kind of a brownish color, but not this rich chocolatey color. So I really like these animals, and there's very few coffees out there. And the thing that's nice about them is that, you know, when you start breeding them into other mutations, to be able to really increase that richness of brown, it may really help out. So again, coffees, polygenic. Then there's kind of the opposite spectrum where you're kind of stripping color away, and that would be what they would call the Turner white animals. As you can see, completely getting faded out and turning kind of a white color. Look at the tail, how white and gray it looks. And that basically is another trait that they kind of continuously bred for. Now, what's interesting about Turner whites is that when they're babies, they really almost look like a northern a normal northern. And then as they grow, they get to, say, sub-adult, then adult. Every time they go through a shed, they get lighter and lighter. So this guy's only about a year and a half old. It's pretty light, but actually, as it gets older, it will probably even fade even more. So I tell you what, I don't know that we're going to have any leucistic animals in the future by Turner white breedings, but you never know. We're certainly going to get whiter and whiter. And again, because blue tongues are kind of in their infancy, and although there's been some people like Ray Gerge that have been breeding blue tongue skinks for 25 plus years, the truth is the vast majority of people are just getting into it over the last 2 or 3 years. So the future is really bright. As we start combining, that's when things start popping up. Let's look at corn snakes, ball pythons, leopard geckos, even bearded dragons. Remember, when people first started breeding them, there's only a handful of mutations, much like the blue tongue skinks. But as you start breeding them and getting them together, you start popping new stuff out. So it's going to be awesome. And this Turner white stuff is definitely going to be a key to it. Let's switch it up for a second here. We've been talking about northern blue tongue skinks. And earlier I told you that there's other forms like the Indos. Well, this happens to be the eastern form, but this is what they call an eastern eye-banded. And actually, Ron Kudu down in Miami is the one that produced these. He has some spectacular animals. He even has a mutation that's linked to this particular type of animal or locality of animal, and truly amazing. Now, the easterns, again, are oftentimes a lot darker, and especially the ones that are from the kind of New South Wales area that are these darker animals, definitely have the big eye bands. And they, like I said, a northern typically will have anywhere from 9 to a big litter might be 15. Believe it or not, easterns can have into their 20s. And of course, the easterns are what the albinos and those jet black ones that we've seen with my buddy Colin Schumark down in Australia. Well, this is the exact species. Again, this is the Telinqua skinkoides skinkoides. So this is kind of the pure skinkoides, right? And they're definitely really cool. Again, care exactly the same. I kind of dig them, and there are some mutations. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and look at a hypo. And here it is, the Hypo Eastern Blue Tongue Skinks. Now that thing is absolutely ridiculous. And again, this is actually a recessive mutation, or at least I think it's a recessive mutation. What you gotta remember is because things are such in the infancy, sometimes people are like, oh yeah, that's recessive, or oh, that's polygenic. And then the more we breed them, we find out really the truth. But for all intents and purposes, this appears to be a recessive mutation, which just basically means that you're gonna breed it to say that eye banded, and you're gonna get all normal looking animals that are carrying the trait for hypomelanism. So that is a gorgeous animal, and it almost looks like T positive, like it's almost a little bit albino, but that's a gorgeous animal. All right, so while we're on different species of blue tongue skink, take a look at this little guy here. This is actually a centralian or multifasciata, and there's very few of these guys around for sure. These actually came from Bill Brandt, who ultimately got them from Rare Earth, who had them in the country years and years ago. And there were 3 animals in the group, and we still have all 3 of them. Sadly, they're all 3 females, so now I have to go on a hunt for either a male to breed to one of these females, or all 3 of these females, or I have to maybe get rid of these 3 females to someone that has a male, and in turn either get some other cool blue tongue skinks back, or maybe even get some babies when these finally do pop. Again, centralians have always been one of my favorite blue tongue skinks, but unfortunately the rarity of them here makes them a little bit hard to work with because you just can't find animals to breed. So I've got 3 females. They're making great pets. Hopefully one day they'll make great moms. So here's one of my first babies. This is from the first litter that I ever produced of blue tongue skinks, and tell you, I was so ecstatic. This was actually a sunset and sunrise bred to a sunrise. Now, judging by the way it's coloring right now, I'm thinking that probably it was the sunrise male that fathered the litter. But the reason I'm not going to show you a bunch of baby skinks is because, to be honest with you, when they're this size, they're just starting to color up, and when they're a little smaller, they're not that interesting, to be honest. I mean, they're beautiful, but you don't start seeing the color of the sunrise, the sunsets, the caramels, until they're this size and even a little bit bigger. But as you can see, the yellow is really starting to come through in this animal. Again, a few weeks ago, this was almost just a brown animal. It's starting to color up really good now. So blue tongue skinks are crazy. I'll definitely do a follow-up show with some baby skinks here in another month or so. So this is what some people call a Hypo Northern and other people call a Caramel Northern. Really, it's the exact same thing. And basically what it is a recessive mutation that is lacking a lot of the color. Pretty much all the black is gone, and it makes it this kind of gray and a little bit of tans in them. Really a beautiful animal. And again, this animal right here actually had 10 babies about a month ago. So she's starting to put her weight back on pretty good. Still needs a little bit of beefing up to go so I can breed her again next year, but she was a great mom. 10 beautiful, gorgeous babies, and absolutely was a thrill. I think this was the second, maybe third litter that I ever produced was from this girl, so she's definitely special. And again, that hypo-ish or caramel-ish, whatever you want to call it, when you start breeding it into other animals, is going to be really cool. Now, I wonder a little bit why some people call them caramels instead of hypos, is as you saw with the Hypo Eastern, that looked very different than this hypo. So maybe just for confusion standpoint, people don't want the Hypo Eastern and the Hypo Northern to be confused, so now they're calling them caramels, which makes complete sense, because the more we can kind of name things where people understand it, the better they are. But regardless of what happens, this animal is going to be cool being bred into other mutations. As I'm opening up cages, just trying to show you guys some things, I came across this animal, and I mean, every time I see it, I just am blown away. Again, I know I've already showed you yellow animals, I've showed you sunrise. This is just a sunrise, but to me, it's not just a sunrise. That is a ridiculous sunrise. Look at the yellow in that animal. To me, it's one of the most yellow northern blue-tongued skinks I've ever seen. I just absolutely love it and had to share it with you. And then I have some animals that I really don't even know what they are, to be totally honest with you. I just bought a lot of, I think I bought about 200 blue-tongued skinks over the last year and a half. So I was buying up anything I not only thought was interesting looking, but even some normal stuff, to be honest with you. And this animal here, and I'll show you its sibling in a minute, were just really light as babies. And oh my gosh, are they turning really amazing. Maybe, I keep saying this, maybe my favorite skinks, but these guys might be my favorite skinks because I just think they're absolutely incredible. And again, they kind of remind you a little of that Turner White because they're turning white as they get bigger, but these guys aren't related to Turner White stuff at all, so I'm really not sure what it is. And the Turner White still has quite a bit of gray out in them, and you can see this guy is really super hypo as well as extremely white. I mean, look at the head. The head is almost a white head, so, and then the other one is pretty good too. So let me go ahead and find that one and pull it out for you. And here's the other guy. This is the sibling. And again, the other one, which is actually a female, looks a little bit more white, to be honest. I mean, that head is much more white. But this one is a little bit more uniform. You know, it doesn't go from like white to a little color to white again. It's almost the same color all the way on. And again, these were siblings, and I raised about 5 or 6 of them from the litter that I bought. And these are the only 2 that turned out really, really cool. Again, when they were babies, they were kind of interesting, but they really are looking cool as they get older. So I can't wait to breed them together and see if I can get this particular color mutation to pass on. You know, maybe 100% of the litter will look just like these guys. This is another line that I'm working on that I hope will end up breeding true, and that's more of like that peachy pink color. Again, similar to the whites where they kind of fade as they get older, but these guys, instead of turning white, turn kind of pink. I have 3 or 4 animals from this line, and they all look pretty much the same, so I'm thinking that they'll probably breed true. And again, what you start to feel here is that we're going for different color palettes and a little bit of pattern mutation as well. Like we have some really, you know, I showed you the ones that are reducing a lot of banding. We have some animals that are really heavily banding, and over the years we're going to want to try to mess with the pattern as well, but right now we're going for color palettes. Those palettes are orange, red, yellow, pink, white, stuff like that. Even that, you know, coppery color, or coffees with that deep, rich brown color. So as we get the color palettes, we can start mixing them into other things and seeing what we can create. So that's what you need. You need the base of color in order to combine to get more interesting animals. And again, this peachy pink thing will probably be pretty cool down the road. I really love this line of animals here. I have about 6 or 7 of them, and they actually came from Jeff Green, who's working with a really red line of northern blue-tongued skinks. I think some of his stock came from Jeff down in Miami, but I'm not 100% sure. Regardless, Jeff has some incredible animals, and his red line is second to none. And this animal is actually from the red line. Now, the reason I like this one is it's really faded as well. So a couple of them are really high red, but this one was red when it was younger, and as it's gotten older, it's kind of faded to this really interesting rose color, and I really like it, and I love the fact that its head faded out so much too, to almost, not quite white, but similar to a white color, like an off-white color. So it almost looks translucent to me, which is something that we saw, let's say, with the Hypo Hondurans, where they're definitely lacking tyrosine, which causes that kind of weird, like purpley look to them. So it almost wonder if there's something like that going on, because you can even see down here in the tail where the black isn't really black, it's more of a purpley color. So this line has me intrigued, and I'm really looking forward to being able to breed some of these animals together to see if we can continue to grow on this kind of translucent look to get that purpley looking animal. Just to show you guys what I was talking about, this is another sibling of the last one I just showed you. You see that just incredible rose color that's coming through and that complete translucent. Almost looks like it's in shed, but this guy just shed out about 2 weeks ago, so it certainly isn't in shed. Again, love this line. I've showed off a lot of really cool skinks, and I've been trying to cover a lot of the guys that have helped me out getting skinks, so I couldn't at least show off 1 or 2 animals that I got from my buddy in Arizona, Austin, who's one of the greatest blue-tongue skink breeders over the last 4 or 5 years. And this is just one of his lines. Again, this is a sunrise line, but I just have to show off a couple things. He sent me so many beautiful skinks over the last 1.5 years or so, so I really appreciate really everyone tutoring me how to kind of learn how to not only keep blue tongues the way they are, but also successfully breeding them. And of course, this year was the first year that I successfully bred them. And if it wasn't for Ray Gerge and Jeff and Austin and Ron and Andrew and all these guys, I would have never been successful. So hopefully now I can kind of teach other people the way they taught me. Basically I can use the information they gave me and kind of give it to you guys, and you guys can start keeping these beautiful animals and hopefully be successful too. But regardless, Austin has some beautiful animals. I tell you what, take a look at this animal here. It's, again, so many times I'm just opening up these guys' cages and are blown away by them. It doesn't matter if I seen them a few days ago, I'm blown away by them again. And this is one that certainly does. Now I know it's a little bit similar to some of the Turner White, the pink stuff, and even the Jeff Green type animals in a sense that it has that same thing. But again, this is a different bloodline, something completely related, unrelated, and I just love it. I mean, I love the fading in it. I love the color tones. I love the fact, and when I look at this, I look at great pallets. All the animals I've shown you so far, I look at pallets of what we can do in the future to produce even more interesting animals and new combinations and new creations. I just think blue-tongue skinks are so exciting. I can honestly tell you, I've said this a million times in the last year. The fact is, I've never been more excited about any species of animal since the early days of ball pythons, 18 or 19 years ago. And again, that doesn't mean that I haven't been excited about everything, corn snakes, milk snakes, leopard geckos, you name it. The fact is I've never felt this excitement, not only within me, but also within the hobby. I've never seen that kind of, I mean, you produce, blue-tongue skinks, you put them up for sale, they're sold in 5 minutes. If you have 10 of them available, 15 people contact you within 10 minutes wanting to buy them. That is something I haven't seen since the early days of ball pythons. So I hope you guys have enjoyed a little bit of a look into my blue-tongue skinks. Trust me, I only got to show you about 5 or 7% of what I have, but it was a cross-section of what we're doing, and hopefully we'll have a lot more in this future coming up. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful project, and I'll be teaching you guys how to care for them as I'm learning as well from the people that have paved the way before me. And as always, guys, I'm Facebooking and tweeting my way through everything I do. So make sure to follow me over at SnakeBytesTV or on Instagram at SnakeBytes.tv. Until next week, you've been watching Snake Bites. Do me a favor, guys, if you've enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button for not only Snake Bites, but other awesome animal videos. And if you want to watch more Snake Bites videos, go ahead and click the link right here and just watch away.